Hello everyone, this is the Math Hub, and today we're going to be going over Unit 1, Lesson 4, Properties of Real Numbers. Okay, so today we have a relatively shorter lesson. All we're going to be going over in this lesson are 3 specific properties of numbers. And it's essentially a way to categorize different equations and basically make them equivalent. So, the first example of a property we can use are commutative properties. Now, there are 2 examples of commutative properties we can use. There's the commutative property of addition, and there's the commutative property of multiplication. So, there's a certain structure to both of these properties, and there is a way using variables that we can demonstrate how this works. So, for the commutative property of addition, we are saying that the expression a plus b, where a is any real number and b is also any real number, we're saying that equals b plus a. So that means we can plug in any number for a and any number for b as long as it's real, and this side is going to absolutely equal this side. It is guaranteed that this side equals this side. So, for example, we can use the example a equals, let's say a equals 18, b equals 54. Just plug in a to both sides and plug in b to both sides. So we have 18 plus 54 equals 54 plus 18. These are both going to simplify to the same number, and that is essentially the commutative property. So this is what you're going to want to know, and you're going to try to identify the property, and you're also going to try to use the property to find certain values. That's all we're doing in this lesson. Next is the multiplication property. Very, very similar. A times b equals b times a. For example, let's use a equals 12, b equals 1/2. We have 12 times 1/2 equals 1/2 times 12. Both sides are going to end up being 6, and that means this multiplication property, commutative property, is true. So that is our first one, and I'll show you the next one in a second. Okay, so now we have our associative properties. So essentially, this is very similar to commutative properties, except one difference is that we're going to have 3 different numbers on each side, unlike 2. So the equation that represents the addition associative property is parentheses a plus b plus c equals a plus parentheses b plus c. Now, you may get tripped up in the fact that there are parentheses saying, oh, I remember learning the PEMDAS. That means that these equations could be different. The answers to both of these could be different because we're using PEMDAS. I'm going to tell you why that's wrong. It is wrong because we are using the exact same symbol. We are using the exact same. We are using addition with both of these numbers. So that means that it actually doesn't matter where you put the parentheses. And both sides, you can honestly just ignore the parentheses as long as they're all the same. You're adding single thing in this side of the equation, and you're adding every single thing in this side of the equation. So it will result in the same answer. So let's use some examples right now. Let's do A equals 23, B equals 4, C equals 5. We have parentheses 23 plus 4 plus 5 equals 23 plus parentheses 4 plus 5. If you fully simplify, you're going to get 32 equals 32. That's going to be the exact same answer on both sides of the equation. That means that this associative property is, in fact, true. Now we have the multiplication property. Once again, very similar. A times B times C equals A times B times C. So once again, honestly, not very difficult as long as you just remember both of these and being able to identify both of these properties and actual problems with numbers and everything. So let's once again give an example. Let's do A equals 7, B equals 2, C equals 10. So we have 7 times 2, in parentheses, times 10. And we have 7 times 2 times 10 in parentheses. So once again, you will get 140 equals 140. It will be the exact same answer on both sides, no matter the order in which you solve it. And that's right there is your associative property. We got one more left. Okay, so now we have our identity properties. Once again, we are simply just going to be doing addition and multiplication for these properties. And then we actually do have two more unique properties at the very end. They are only for specific cases and honestly not too hard to identify. But for this identity properties, we're going to have a certain number on one side of the equation, and it is going to give you the exact same number on the opposite side of the equation. And it has no effect on your answer. So we have any number A for the addition plus 0 equals the number A. Very, very simple. You just plug in any real number, add it with 0, and you still get that number. So A equals 8. You have 8 plus 0. That's going to equal 8. For the multiplication, extremely similar, except it's multiplied by 1. So once again, using the example A equals 8, if you plug in 8 to A, it's going to be 8 times 1 equals 8. Every single time this is going to work. As long as the number is a real number, both of these are going to work every single time. So, pick, 1,000. Plug it into A on both sides. 1,000 plus 0, going to equal 1,000. 1,000 times 1, going to equal 1,000. That's all these identity properties are. Two quick things, and then we're done with this lesson. Okay, last two things here. We have the 0 property and the multiplication property of -1. Both of these are using multiplication, and all we have to do is, we already know our answer. Our answer for this one is going to always be 0. Answer for this one is always going to be the opposite of what the number is. So, for example, let's just say we have our equation here, A, any number A, times 0 is always going to equal 0. For any real number, that is going to happen. So plug in 1/2, plug in 1,000, plug in 64. Every single value plugged in for A in this scenario is going to give you 0. So you multiply anything by 0, it's going to give you 0. That's the 0 property of multiplication. Now we have the multiplication property of -1. So as you may expect, it's exact same thing. A times -1 is going to get you the negative A. This one's a little bit more tricky than the previous ones. You are simply just flipping the sign of A, and that is your answer. When you multiply anything by 1, you are simply going to flip the sign of this number, and that is your answer. So let's say it is 6. Let's say we're using A equals 6. It's going to be 6 times -1, and that is going to equal the flipped sign of 6, that's -6. So it's just 6 is positive, what's it flipped? -6. And that would make sense because we're plugging in 6 to A here. Yep, that's a -6. Now, the reason why this could be tricky is because what if A is already a negative number? What if you had A equals -3? So you plug in -3 to both sides, right? -3 times -1 equals -3. You can't just get rid of this negative here when you plug in this -3. You have to have them both the negative signs inputted into the equation. So you have -3 times -1. What is the flipped sign of -3? That's going to be 3. It's going to be +3. And then we have -3. We have a negative and we have another negative. And when we have two negatives being multiplied by each other, it's going to give you a positive. So we actually have 3 equals 3 in this equation, and that demonstrates the multiplication property of -1. So that's going to do it for this lesson. It isn't very complicated, but I did go about it a little quick. As always, if you have any questions, make sure to comment and ask anything. And yeah, just practice. It's easy to identify as long as you have enough practice with it. Just try to remember each of these equations, and those will help you use them in real life scenarios, real problems that you're going to have to solve on a test. So thank you all for your time, and I'll see you guys in the next one.